On January 30, 2026, the US Department of Justice published more than 3.5 million pages of records, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images related to its investigation into the crimes of convicted sex offender
Jeffrey Epstein and his longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell. The production fulfilled the requirements of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a law passed by Congress and signed in later 2025 that obligated the department to disclose investigative materials not previously made public.
The documents come from a range of sources: court filings and search warrants from the Southern District of New York and Southern District of Florida, evidence collected during the state prosecution of Epstein, FBI, interviews and investigative reports, confiscated electronic devices, and files from Maxwell's own prosecution. Thousands of redactions were made to protect the identities of victims and to comply with legal privileges such as attorney-client confidentiality or deliberative process privilege. Justice officials emphasized that the files do not constitute a new indictment, nor do they assert that the presence of any name proves criminal conduct. Instead, the materials represent raw investigatory records that were collected over decades in the course of multiple federal and state investigations. Among the contents are emails, flight logs, calendars, correspondence, interview notes, and other investigative material that document Epstein's social and business interactions with a wide range of prominent individuals. Some records reflect scheduling of meetings, travel plans, or social invitations, and not allegations of illegal conduct. Officials warned the public that the volume of material includes items submitted to the FBI by the public that were not vetted for accuracy before inclusion in the production.
Because of this, observers have emphasized the distinction that has been stressed repeatedly by the Justice Department. References to individuals in these files do not equate to verified allegations of criminal behavior. In some cases, names appear in draft or unverified communications. In others, documents are heavily redacted or incomplete. Public reporting notes that the files include references to figures such as Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Elon Musk, and others, but that these references frequently relate to communications, event planning, or social contexts rather than verified evidence of misconduct. Some appearances are simply in the form of flight logs, guest lists, or emails about scheduling. For example, portions of the released material include an FBI document listing unverified tips that mention allegations about Donald Trump. The department clarified that those tips were never substantiated and that many came through the FBI's National Threat Operations Center as unsolicited complaints rather than as evidence gathered in an investigation.
In other cases, reporting based on released emails notes that Epstein corresponded with individuals such as Elon Musk about logistics and events, though Musk has publicly stated that he did not engage in sexual activity with Epstein and maintained that his contact with Epstein was limited and non-criminal in nature. These emails reflect planning of meetings and proposed visits, not criminal charges contained within the release itself. The files also contain draft internal emails attributed to Epstein in which he claimed to have assisted others in personal matters. One such allegation involving Bill Gates is included in the production, though Gates's representatives have emphatically denied the claim and characterized it as false. The Department of Justice stresses that these draft emails are not judicial findings and that Gates himself has publicly rejected the assertions as absurd and lacking factual basis. It is important to note that neither Trump, Clinton, Musk, nor Gates has been charged in connection with Epstein's criminal operations by the Department of Justice or any prosecutorial authority in the United States. Officials have underscored that inclusion of names in the documents does not equate to criminal liability or verified participation in Epstein's offenses. The documents also illustrate the persistent difficulty law enforcement faced in prosecuting Epstein and his associates. A previously drafted but never filed indictment from the 2000s described alleged co-conspirators who facilitated the procurement of minors for sexual exploitation, but that indictment was never brought to trial as part of a controversial non-prosecution agreement at the time. Subsequent reviews criticized that agreement as the result of poor prosecutorial judgment, not evidence that additional charges were unwarranted.
Advocates for victims have raised concerns about the extent of redactions and the potential withholding of material that could shed light on who else may have been involved in Epstein's network. Critics argue that even millions of pages released may represent only a portion of the total records identified as responsive under the transparency law. Lawmakers have called for additional disclosures and clearer summaries of what remains redacted and why. Beyond officials and politicians, the files offer insight into the operational networks Epstein maintained. They document communications between Epstein and his close associate, Mrs. Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving a federal sentence for her role in facilitating his criminal conduct. These records include financial records, correspondence, and logistical planning that reveal the administrative structure surrounding Epstein's properties, travel, and contacts. Public reaction to the release has been mixed. Some survivors and advocates have welcomed the transparency as a necessary step toward accountability, even if many documents remain heavily redacted or only partially understood by the public. Others have criticized what they see as delays, omissions, and the potential for unverified material to be misconstrued as factual. One subject of frequent speculation and reporting outside official disclosures is Epstein's claimed association with foreign intelligence services. Government records show Epstein maintained social contact with a range of international figures, but there is no declassified evidence presented in the files that conclusively links him to any foreign intelligence service, including the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad. Assertions of intelligence ties remain in the realm of speculation and secondary reporting rather than verified Justice Department material. Proceedings and investigations into Epstein's financial activities, travel, and contacts have involved law enforcement, but public documents do not substantiate claims of espionage or intelligence recruitment. Today's release represents the largest single disclosure of records connected to a high-profile criminal case in US history. While the volume of material offers historians, journalists, and the public a deep well of primary source documents, officials caution that interpretation requires careful analysis and that inclusion in the files does not constitute evidence of criminal action by any named individual. As debate continues over the legacy of Epstein's crimes and the scope of his associations, one thing is clear: the newly released files provide an unprecedented view into the breadth of his social, financial, and communication networks. They raise important questions about accountability, the handling of investigations involving powerful individuals, and the balance between transparency for the public and protection of victims' privacy. The Epstein files may not answer every question the public has asked for decades, but they do mark a significant step in opening the historical record and allowing independent review of records long kept under seal by the justice system.